while we're talking about impeachment, the polling on this, and I don't think it's terribly relevant, frankly, we saw the polling go way up as soon as the Democrats started impeaching last time. And I think the polling is, to a certain extent, it's largely irrelevant in the context of this equation. There is something that we simply cannot tolerate as a society if we send the message that this is okay, and that as long as you don't threaten us anymore, we won't hold anybody to account. We are just inviting more of this moving forward. And
polling isn't static, let me just say.
Exactly.
You can influence it,
exactly,
as we did with the first impeachment. Democrats did.
We're going to play a series of clips of right-wingers saying, like, oh, you better not impeach. It's going to make people angry. I mean, hello. There seems to be some anger out there right now. And what we need to do as a society is indicate what is an appropriate way to express that anger. Here we have, however, in Bloomberg, and this is just like another impetus, and this has more to do, it seems to me, with the ability for Democrats to do two things. One, to pass and promote and to, I guess, initiate good policy, but also good politics. And that is that there is a force pushing against Democrats, which Republicans have all but abandoned at this point because just their agenda dovetails quite nicely with these people. Bloomberg reports that former Senate Democratic leader Tom Daschle and former Senate leader Trent Lott, they actually had a 50-50 split during the late 90s, mid 90s. Similar situation. Bill Clinton was the president. Al Gore presided over the Senate. So they had worked out, because you've got to negotiate. How many people do we have on a committee, et cetera, et cetera. Former Senate Democratic leader Tom Daschle warned his party against impeaching President Donald Trump for inciting the mob attack on the Capitol, arguing that even a delayed Senate trial risks impending urgent action President-elect Joe Biden must take to bolster the economy and combat the COVID-19 pandemic. An impeachment mechanism is just not the right course at all if they want to hold the president accountable, Daschle said at a forum on Monday with Trent Lott, held by the Bipartisan Policy Center. First off, a couple of points on this. One is that even with the House run by Newt Gingrich back in the 90s, which was in many respects the prototype for the Republican Party we see today, in a very specific way. The whole thing where it's like you get overly aggressive and you call Democrats Democrat because you've tested with Frank Luntz that it reminds people of the word rat. That's why they do this, and that's where it came from, that era. The Senate hadn't quite been infected by this Republican, just completely off the rails. Never mind their policy set, but the way that they did their politics. Trent Lott had to resign in the early aughts from Senate Majority Leader because he spoke at a birthday party for Strom Thurmond, who was at that time well into his 90s, still in the Senate. He was in, I think it was in the 40s, a Dixiecrat candidate who was running on a platform of segregation. So Trent Lott's at the birthday party. We all love you, Strom Thurmond. We all know this would have been a better country had you won the presidency. Guys running on a segregation platform.
Yeah, also Joe Biden eulogized Strom Thurmond.
Indeed.
Let's just point that out.
That's true. But Trent Lott was called for that comment. His resignation was called for. Now, there's a lot of people who think that Bill Frist had something to do that. He was the one who was waiting in the wings to take over from Trent Lott, and that this was promoted by right-wingers who want to get Trent Lott out because what had happened in the House in terms of Republicans was happening in the Senate. And Trent Lott was a little bit too respectful of bipartisanship at that time. That is one of the stories. We are so far from that era of Senate comedy Not comedy, haha, but comedy in terms
Comedy
of
with a T.
collegiality.
Yes.
Which is why this is just a bizarre thing that Tom Daschle's talking about, that there's legislation that's going to get 10 Republican votes in the Senate. There is not legislation that's going to get 10 Republican votes in the Senate. I'm sorry. There is none. Certainly not on any big spending bills. There's just no way. There's nothing for them to bring to the American public. They've already gotten the tax cuts that they want.
Yeah.
There is, other than like cuts on Social Security or whatever, there's nothing for the Republicans in terms of spending to deal with COVID. That's all going to have to happen through reconciliation, which requires only a simple majority and is not subject to a filibuster by the Republicans. And we will talk more about the dynamics of reconciliation. Now, Tom Daschle surely knows this. Trent Lott surely knows this. They both are lobbyists and advisors to politicians. So this is really just like, we have a problem. Nobody's listening to Trent Lott anyways.
No.
But we have a problem with in Democratic politics, and just broadly speaking, because Democrats also represent the center now, as well as the left and the center left, that when you see the word bipartisan, more often than not, much more often than not, it is basically moneyed interests trying to make sure that we get into a situation where there is as little change as possible. You can go ask your mortgage broker right now. What do you feel about the potential of what happened to mortgage rates after the Democrats won in Georgia? It was starting to creep up because the idea is going to be there's going to be a lot of money that's going to be spent. And that's going to make Treasury bills less enticing. So they're going to have to raise rates. I mean, the idea of static, of nothing happening, is good for money, for big, and when you have people like Daschle and Trent Lott, who are, lobbying these people, this is what you're going to get. And fortunately, the Democrats don't seem to be listening to this type of rhetoric anymore. Or at least in this moment, because like you pointed out, this is something that's very personal for them, because they were stuck in that building as cops were being beaten to death, as cops are being dragged out, as people are smashing windows, as people are walking around with zip ties, as they're building a noose and a gallows out front. I mean, this is nuts.